The stars looked different from the bridge of the Valthrine flagship. Commander Thexivor stood before the massive viewing screen, watching the small blue planet grow larger with each passing moment. Behind him, his crew worked silently at their stations, monitoring the 200 warships that followed in perfect formation. Thexivor had conquered 12 worlds in his career. This would be the 13th and by far the easiest. The reports were clear. Humanity was primitive, weak, and completely unprepared for what was coming. They had barely left their own planet. A few satellites orbited their world, and a small station circled their moon. Nothing more. The Valthrine scouts had watched them for decades, and the conclusion was always the same. Earth would fall in days, perhaps hours. The Dominion needed this world. Its oceans were vast, its atmosphere perfect, and its resources abundant. The humans living there would be relocated to mining colonies, where they could serve a useful purpose. It was the natural order of things. Strong species expanded. Weak species served. This was how the galaxy worked. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a facility carved into the mountains of the Korean peninsula, Admiral Daeho watched the same screens with very different thoughts. The command center buzzed with quiet activity as hundreds of officers monitored the approaching threat. The room was enormous, filled with displays showing every corner of the solar system. Red dots marked the enemy fleet, moving steadily toward Earth. Beside Daeho stood Captain Jiwon, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. She had trained for this moment her entire career, but now that it was here, she felt the weight of it pressing down on her shoulders. 200 ships, millions of enemy soldiers. If they failed, humanity would cease to exist as a free species. "They're still in formation," Jiwon said quietly. "Confident. They think we can't hurt them." Daeho nodded slowly. His face showed no emotion, but inside he felt a cold anger building. The Valthrine had made a mistake. They had watched Earth, yes, but they had only seen what humanity wanted them to see. The satellites, the space station, the simple rockets, all of it was theater. A carefully constructed lie designed to make Earth look harmless. "How long until they reach the outer defense perimeter?" Daeho asked. A young officer named Sang-hoon checked his console. 6 hours, sir. They'll cross the Neptune marker at 1400 hours. Daeho looked at the clock. 6 more hours of waiting. 6 more hours of watching the enemy approach, knowing they could destroy them at any moment but holding back, waiting for the perfect time, waiting for them to commit fully, to come so close they couldn't escape. Captain Hyunwoo entered the command center, his boots clicking sharply on the metal floor. He was younger than Daeho, but his eyes carried the same hard determination. Hyunwoo commanded the Space Defense Corps, the elite force that would lead the counterattack when the time came. "Admiral," Hyunwoo said, saluting, "all defense platforms are ready. The crews are asking for permission to activate weapon systems." "Not yet," Daeho replied. "Let them come closer. Let them think they're safe." Hyunwoo nodded and took his position at the tactical station. He understood the strategy. If Earth revealed its weapons too early, the enemy might retreat and return with even more ships. But if they waited, if they let the enemy commit everything to this attack, they could end the threat completely. On Mars, Commander Youngman stood in the observation dome of the hidden military base, watching Earth through a telescope. His base was one of dozens scattered across the solar system, each one disguised as a research station or mining operation. In reality, they were weapons platforms equipped with the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. His second-in-command, Yoonji, walked up beside him. "The stealth destroyers are in position," she reported. 30 ships, all hidden in the asteroid belt. The enemy has passed within 1,000 kilometers of them without noticing. Youngman smiled slightly. "Good. When the time comes, we'll hit them from behind while they're focused on Earth." Back on the Valthrine flagship, Thexivor received reports from his scout ships. They had probed deeper into the system, scanning for defenses. They found nothing unusual. A few more satellites than expected, perhaps, but nothing that posed any threat to his fleet. "Send the message," Thexivor ordered. "Tell them to surrender immediately." The communications officer activated the transmission array. The message went out in 17 different languages, a demand for immediate and unconditional surrender. Thexivor had sent this same message to 11 other worlds. Most had surrendered immediately. A few had tried to fight. None had succeeded. In the Earth Command Center, the message appeared on the screens. Officers translated it quickly, though everyone already knew what it would say. Surrender or die. Submit or be destroyed. Ji-won looked at Daiho. Should we respond? Daiho thought for a moment. Yes. Send them a message in their own language. Tell them they've entered sovereign space without permission. Tell them to turn back. The communications team worked quickly. Within minutes, the response was ready. It was transmitted directly to the Valthrine flagship in perfect Valthrine dialect, using their own military protocols. On his bridge, Thexfor heard the message and laughed. The primitive humans dared to threaten him? They spoke his language, which was mildly impressive, but words meant nothing without the power to back them up. And Earth had no power. His fleet could destroy their entire civilization before their sunset. They refused to surrender, Thexfor announced to his bridge crew. Prepare for attack. Send the vanguard forward. 50 ships. Destroy their communications satellites and any defense installations you find. Make it quick and decisive. The 50 ships broke from the main formation, accelerating toward Earth. They were the pride of the Valthrine fleet, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. Their shields could withstand nuclear weapons. Their armor was nearly indestructible. Nothing Earth possessed could stop them. In orbit around Earth, Captain Minji watched the 50 ships approach. She commanded the orbital defense grid from a small station that appeared to be nothing more than a communications relay. In reality, it was the command center for a network of weapons platforms hidden throughout near-Earth space. Lieutenant Sang-hoon sat at the weapons console beside her. They're splitting their formation, he observed. 50 ships moving ahead. The rest are holding back, Minji nodded. They're testing us, seeing if we have any real defenses. She looked at the countdown timer on her screen. The enemy ships would be in range in 3 minutes. Prepare all batteries. Target acquisition on those 50 ships. All batteries ready, Sang-hoon confirmed. Targeting locked. Minji opened a channel to Earth Command. Admiral, the Vanguard is in range. Requesting permission to engage. Deep in his command center, Daiho looked at the displays one last time. The enemy fleet was committed now. They had split their forces, showing their tactics. And the 50 ships in front were close enough that they couldn't escape, even if they tried. Permission granted, Daiho said calmly. Show them what we really are. Minji allowed herself a small smile. She had waited her entire life for this moment. Fire all weapons, she ordered. Across Earth's orbital space, hundreds of weapons platforms came to life. They had been hidden in plain sight for decades, disguised as dead satellites, space junk, and abandoned equipment. Now they revealed their true purpose. Quantum disintegration arrays developed from technology recovered from a previous alien encounter and improved by human genius, powered up and locked onto their targets. The Valthrine Vanguard didn't even have time to realize they were in danger. In the space of 3 seconds, 50 warships simply ceased to exist. No explosions, no debris, no escape pods. They were there one moment and gone the next, erased at the subatomic level. On his flagship, Thexfor stared at his displays in shock. 50 ships. Gone. Impossible. His hands trembled as he tried to understand what had just happened. How could a primitive world have weapons like this? In the Earth Command Center, every officer watched their screens in silence. Then someone started clapping. Within seconds, the entire room erupted in cheers. But Admiral Daiho didn't cheer. He simply watched the remaining enemy ships on his display and said quietly, "Now they know. Now the real battle begins." The silence on the Valthrine flagship was absolute. Every officer stared at their displays, trying to process what they had just witnessed. 50 capital ships had vanished without a trace. No energy signatures that made sense. No conventional weapons fire. Just erasure. Commander Thexfor felt his confidence crumbling. For the first time in his long military career, he experienced genuine fear. His training told him to retreat, to reassess, to gather intelligence. But his pride and the eyes of the Dominion watching from home demanded action. He couldn't return with tales of defeat against a species they had deemed primitive. Status report, Thexfor demanded, his voice tight with controlled panic. His tactical officer worked frantically at his console. Sir, I'm detecting no debris from the Vanguard. No heat signatures, no radiation. They're just gone. Sensors show brief quantum fluctuations at their last known positions, but nothing our database recognizes. What kind of weapon does that? Thexfor asked. Unknown, sir. Nothing in our records matches this technology. On Earth, Captain Ji-won studied the enemy fleet's reaction. They had stopped their advance and were clearly in disarray. Their formation had broken as ships moved erratically. probably trying to scan for hidden threats. They're scared, Jiwan observed. Good. Fear makes people make mistakes. Admiral Deho nodded. But fear also makes them dangerous. A cornered animal fights hardest. We need to be ready for whatever comes next. Captain Hyunwoo pulled up a tactical map showing the entire solar system. Blue dots represented human forces, red dots the enemy. We have stealth units positioned throughout the system. Mars base is ready. Lunar artillery platforms are charged. If they advance, we can hit them from multiple directions. What about the outer platforms? Deho asked. Jupiter and Saturn stations report full readiness, Hyunwoo confirmed. The enemy doesn't even know they exist. As far as they can tell, all our defenses are near Earth. Deho allowed himself a slight smile. Humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. After the first contact with alien species 70 years ago, Earth's governments had finally united with a single purpose: never be vulnerable again. Every resource, every breakthrough in science, every new technology had been dedicated to building a defense network that could protect humanity from any threat. They had learned from the aliens they'd encountered. Some had been peaceful, willing to trade knowledge. Others had been hostile, testing Earth's defenses with small probes and scout ships. Each encounter taught humanity something new, and with each lesson Earth became stronger. The quantum disintegration technology had come from a crashed scout ship 40 years ago. Human scientists had spent decades figuring out how it worked, then improving it. Now it was humanity's primary weapon, capable of erasing matter at the molecular level. It required enormous energy, which was why Earth had built fusion reactors the size of cities hidden underground and beneath the oceans. On Mars base, Commander Youngman briefed his pilots. The hangar was massive, carved deep into the red planet's surface. Rows of stealth fighters lined the walls, their hulls made of adaptive materials that bent light and sensor waves around them. Lieutenant Taehyung stood with his squadron, listening to the briefing. He was young, only 26, but he had trained in simulators since he was 15. Every pilot in the Earth Defense Forces grew up knowing they might have to fight for humanity's survival. Today, that theoretical possibility had become reality. We wait for the Admiral's signal, Youngman said. When it comes, we launch and hit them from behind. They'll be focused on Earth, not looking for threats from Mars. That's our advantage. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we disappear before they can react. Beside Taehyung, his wingmate Sora checked her flight suit one more time. Think they'll advance again? She asked. They have to, Taehyung replied. They came here to conquer. If they leave now, they look weak. Their empire will question their strength. They'll attack again, probably with everything they have. On the Valthrine flagship, Thex-4 reached the same conclusion. Retreat was not an option. The Dominion did not accept failure. He would either conquer this world or die trying. At least in death, he might preserve his honor. Open a channel to all ships, Thex-4 ordered. Prepare for full assault. Every vessel, all weapons. We overwhelm them with numbers. Whatever destroyed the Vanguard, it must have limits. We make them use it until it fails. His officers looked uncertain, but they obeyed. Orders went out to the remaining 150 ships. They formed into a massive wedge formation, concentrating their shields forward. It was a battering ram tactic, designed to punch through heavy defenses through sheer force. In Earth Command, alarms sounded as sensors detected the enemy formation change. They're massing for a full assault, Jiwan reported. All ships advancing together. Deho studied the display. They think they can overwhelm us with numbers. They still don't understand what they're facing. He opened channels to every command station in the solar system. All units prepare for full engagement. Earth orbital platforms fire at will. Mars base launch fighters. Lunar artillery begin bombardment. Jupiter and Saturn stations activate gravity wells on my mark. Around Earth, hundreds of weapons platforms revealed themselves. What the Valthrine had dismissed as space debris suddenly lit up with power signatures. Railgun emplacements on the moon adjusted their aim. Each railgun was 3 kilometers long, buried beneath the lunar surface. They used magnetic acceleration to fire projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. At those velocities, even a small piece of metal became a devastating weapon. Captain Minji coordinated the orbital defense. All platforms target acquisition. Fire pattern Delta 7. Let's thin them out. The quantum disintegration arrays fired first. Beams of coherent energy lanced through space, invisible to the naked eye but devastating on impact. 10 Valthrine ships simply vanished. Then 20, then 30. The array had a recharge time, but with hundreds of platforms firing in sequence, there was no gap in the assault. The lunar railguns fired next. Projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, their targeting computers predicting where enemy ships would be by the time the rounds arrived. The first volley hit 6 ships, punching through their shields like they weren't there. The kinetic energy was so great that the ships exploded from the inside out. On his flagship, HFY watched his fleet die. Alarms screamed. His crew shouted reports. Ships disappeared from his tactical display with horrifying speed. They were losing 10 vessels every minute, and they hadn't even reached Earth yet. "Return fire," HFY screamed. "All weapons fire at will." The Valthrine fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons, missile volleys, energy beams, all of it aimed at Earth and its defenders. It was an impressive display of firepower, enough to destroy a small moon. But Earth's shields held. Defensive screens, powered by those massive underground fusion reactors, absorbed or deflected the attacks. Some satellites were destroyed, but they were decoys anyway. The real weapons platforms were protected by multiple layers of shielding. Commander Youngman gave the order. "Launch all fighters. Execute attack pattern Omega." The hangar doors opened and 30 stealth fighters shot out of Mars base. They accelerated rapidly, their engines leaving almost no heat signature. Within minutes, they were among the Valthrine fleet attacking from behind. Taehyung locked onto his first target, a heavy cruiser that was focused on firing toward Earth. His fighters' weapons were small compared to the big ships, but they were precise. He targeted the cruiser's engine section, where shields were weakest, and fired a concentrated plasma burst. The cruiser's engines exploded, sending it spinning out of control. Sora took down 2 frigates in quick succession. The enemy ships couldn't track the human fighters. They were too fast, too small, and their stealth systems were too good. It was like being attacked by ghosts. "This is incredible," Sora said over the comm. "Their targeting systems can't even see us." "Stay focused," Taehyung replied. "Pick your targets and keep moving. Don't get cocky." But it was hard not to feel confident. The alien ships were slow and predictable. Their formations were rigid. Human fighters, by contrast, moved with fluid grace, constantly adapting and shifting. Earth's pilots had trained against advanced AI opponents that learned and evolved. Fighting these aliens felt easy by comparison. Admiral Deho watched the battle unfold from his command center. The displays showed the enemy fleet shrinking rapidly. They had destroyed 60 ships in the first 10 minutes of combat. The remaining 90 were trying to retreat, but they were too slow. "Activate Jupiter and Saturn platforms," Deho ordered. "Cut off their escape." Near Jupiter, hidden among the gas giant's many moons, massive gravity well generators came online. They created artificial gravity fields that disrupted faster than light travel. Any ship trying to jump to warp speed would be torn apart. The enemy fleet was now trapped in the solar system, unable to advance or retreat. HFY realized this with growing horror. "We're trapped," he whispered. "They herded us like animals into a pen." His tactical officer confirmed it. "Sir, we can't jump. Some kind of gravity field is blocking our engines. And they're hitting us from all sides. Orbital platforms, ground-based weapons, fighter craft, and now I'm detecting energy signatures near Jupiter." And the Valthrine fleet was dying, and Commander HFY could do nothing to stop it. His tactical display showed red icons winking out of existence with terrible regularity. What had begun as a force of 200 warships now numbered less than 90, and that number dropped every few seconds. "Sir, we need to surrender," his second officer pleaded. "If we don't, they'll kill us all." HFY wanted to agree, but he knew the truth. Surrender was not an option that the Dominion allowed. If he tried to yield, his own crew would be obligated to execute him and continue fighting. It was the law. Victory or death, those were the only acceptable outcomes. "Keep firing," HFY said wearily. "Try to take as many of them with us as possible." But they weren't taking any of the enemy with them. That was the most frustrating part. For all their advanced weapons and powerful ships, the Valthrine fleet hadn't destroyed a single major Earth installation. A few decoy satellites perhaps, but nothing that mattered. Meanwhile, Earth's weapons cut through Valthrine shields and armor like they were made of paper. On Earth, Admiral Deho watched the enemy's futile attacks with cold satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Better than planned, actually. The enemy was more disorganized than expected, their tactics more predictable. It almost felt unfair. Almost. "Captain Jiwon, what's our ammunition status?" Daeho asked. Jiwon checked multiple displays. "Quantum arrays are cycling normally. We can maintain this rate of fire indefinitely. Lunar railguns have unlimited ammunition. We're just accelerating chunks of processed lunar regolith. Energy weapons are drawing from the main reactors, which are operating at only 60% capacity. So we could fight twice as hard if needed," Daeho observed. "Yes, sir. We're not even close to our limits." Captain Hyunwoo joined them at the command table. "Mars fighters are reporting target saturation. There are more pilots than there are enemy ships worth targeting. Should I recall some squadrons?" Daeho shook his head. "No, keep them engaged. Every pilot needs real combat experience. This might be the only chance they get." In space near Mars, Lieutenant Taehyung lined up his 6th kill. His fighter's targeting computer locked onto a Valthrine destroyer that was trying to flee toward the asteroid belt. The destroyer's engines glowed bright as it attempted to build up speed, but it was too slow. Taehyung's plasma cannons fired, and the destroyer's rear section exploded in a ball of superheated gas. "That's 6, Sora said over the comm. "I'm at 8. You're falling behind." "It's not a competition," Taehyung replied, but he couldn't help smiling. Despite the seriousness of the battle, there was a certain thrill to it. They had trained for years, running endless simulations, always wondering if they would ever face real combat. Now they were, and all that training was paying off. Another pilot, Dong-yun, called out over the squadron channel. "Anyone else think this is too easy? I mean, these aliens are supposed to be a galactic empire, right? They should be tougher." Taehyung understood the feeling. The enemy ships were large and well-armed, but they moved like cargo haulers, not warships. Their formations were rigid and predictable. When one ship took damage, the others didn't adjust to cover it. They just kept following their original orders, even when those orders no longer made sense. "Maybe we're just better," Sora suggested. "Earth has been preparing for this for decades. We've had time to develop our tactics and technology. They probably haven't faced serious opposition in years." She was right, though Taehyung didn't want to say it out loud. The Valthrine Dominion had conquered 12 worlds. That sounded impressive. But what if those 12 worlds had been even less prepared than the Valthrine expected Earth to be? What if the Dominion had grown complacent, used to easy victories against helpless targets? On the moon, Commander Seojin supervised the artillery platforms. The lunar surface shook with each railgun shot, sending up clouds of dust that sparkled in the sunlight. His gunners worked with practiced efficiency, loading, firing, reloading. The rhythm was almost meditative. His tactical officer, Jihi, monitored the targeting computers. "Commander, we're running out of viable targets." "Most of the remaining enemy ships are too damaged to pose a threat. They're just limping around trying to survive." Seojin frowned. "What's Admiral Daeho's order?" "Continue engagement until the enemy is completely neutralized." "Then we keep firing," Seojin said. "No mercy. They came here to conquer us. They would have shown us none." Jihi nodded and relayed targeting data to the gun crews. Another volley of projectiles launched, streaking across space toward the crippled Valthrine vessels. Most of the shots hit their targets. Those that missed would eventually leave the solar system, traveling through interstellar space until they hit something millions of years from now. On the Valthrine flagship, systems were failing. Smoke filled the corridors. Emergency lights flickered. Thexivor clung to his command chair as the ship shuddered from another impact. They had been hit by something, he wasn't even sure what anymore. The humans had so many different weapons, all devastating in different ways. "Damage report." Thexivor coughed through the smoke. "Main engines offline," someone reported. "Shields at 15%. Weapon systems failing. Life support compromised on decks 4 through 8. "How many ships do we have left?" 47, sir." "No, wait, 45, 43. Thexivor closed his eyes. From 200 to 43 in less than an hour. It was a massacre. No, it was worse than a massacre. It was an extermination. The humans were systematically destroying his entire fleet, and they were doing it with casual efficiency. "Can we at least send a warning?" Thexivor asked his communications officer. "A brief message, something that might get through their jamming?" "I've been trying, sir. They're blocking everything. Every frequency, every protocol. It's like they knew exactly how to counter our systems." Of course they did, Thexivor realized. The scouts had been watching Earth for decades. But Earth had been watching back. They had probably captured and studied Valthrine technology long ago. They knew every weakness, every vulnerability. This whole battle had been planned in advance, down to the smallest detail. Admiral Deho stood at the center of his command center, surrounded by displays showing the battle from every angle. His officers worked efficiently, calling out status reports in calm voices. There was no panic here, no chaos. Just professional soldiers doing their jobs. Captain Minji reported from orbit. "Sir, enemy fleet strength is down to 40 ships. Most are heavily damaged. They're not even attempting coordinated action anymore, just individual ships trying to survive." "How long until complete elimination?" Deho asked. "At current rate, 15 minutes. We could speed it up if you want." Deho thought about it. Part of him wanted to end this quickly, to eliminate the threat as fast as possible, but another part wanted to draw it out to make sure every ship was accounted for. If even one vessel escaped to warn the Dominion, Earth would face a larger fleet next time. Maintain current pace, Deho decided, but deploy hunter-killer teams to pursue any ships that break away. "I want a full accounting. Every single vessel destroyed or captured." "Captured, sir?" Minji sounded surprised. "Yes, if any crew attempts to surrender, we'll accept it. We're not monsters, but any ship that continues fighting gets destroyed." On Mars base, Commander Youngman watched the fighter squadrons work. His pilots were performing brilliantly, better than he had hoped. They moved through the enemy formation like deadly dancers, each fighter coordinating perfectly with the others. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Yunji stood beside him, monitoring the battle data. "Casualties?" Youngman asked. "None on our side, sir. Not even damaged fighters. The enemy hasn't landed a single effective hit on any of our units." Youngman shook his head in amazement. 0 casualties in a battle against 200 warships. That shouldn't be possible. "It's the preparation," Yunji said. "We've spent decades planning for this. We studied every alien species we encountered. We built weapons specifically designed to counter their technology. We trained against AI opponents that adapted to our tactics. By the time this fleet arrived, we were ready for anything they could do." "Maybe too ready," Youngman muttered. "This was supposed to be a test of our defenses. Instead, it's target practice." In his fighter, Taehyung pursued a fleeing frigate. The alien ship was damaged, trailing atmosphere and debris, but its engines still functioned. It was trying to reach the edge of the gravity well, probably hoping to jump to faster than light speed and escape. "Not going to happen," Taehyung said to himself. He accelerated, closing the distance. His targeting computer locked on and he fired. The frigate's engines exploded and the ship went dead in space. "That's 12, Sora called out. "I'm still ahead at 15. "Show off," Taehyung replied, but he was smiling. All around the solar system, the same scene repeated. Human forces hunted down the remnants of the Valthrine fleet with ruthless efficiency. Some alien ships tried to hide in asteroid fields or behind moons. Others attempted desperate kamikaze runs at Earth itself. None succeeded. The quantum disintegration arrays were particularly effective. They didn't care about shields or R. The silence in the aftermath of battle felt strange. For nearly 2 hours, space around Earth had been filled with weapons fire, explosions, and the electromagnetic chatter of warfare. Now there was only the quiet hum of monitoring systems and the occasional crackle of status reports. Admiral Deho walked through the command center, observing his officers as they transitioned from combat operations to cleanup. Ships needed to be refueled and rearmed. Sensor arrays had to be recalibrated. Damage reports compiled, even though Earth had suffered almost no losses. It was the mundane work that followed every battle, but it was necessary. Captain Jiwon approached him with a datapad. "Initial analysis of the battle, sir. We expended approximately 8% of our total ammunition stores. 0 casualties on our side. 3 satellites destroyed, but they were decoys anyway. All major systems functioning normally." "And the enemy?" Deho asked, though he already knew the answer. 200 ships destroyed. Estimated crew complement of 3 million. No survivors detected. We're sending recovery teams to collect wreckage for analysis. But preliminary scans suggest most ships were completely destroyed. The quantum arrays don't leave much behind. Deho nodded slowly. 3 million lives ended in 2 hours. It was a staggering number, but he felt no guilt. They had come to conquer Earth, to enslave or destroy humanity. They had made their choice, and now they paid the price. "What about long-range sensors?" Deho asked. "Any indication that the Dominion knows what happened?" "No, sir. Our jamming was effective. No signals escaped the solar system. As far as the Dominion knows, their fleet is still in transit or engaged in the invasion. They won't know anything is wrong until the fleet fails to report back on schedule. How long do we have? Ji-Won checked her data. Based on the fleet's original timeline, the Dominion will expect a report within 3 weeks. When they don't get it, they'll probably send scouts. Those scouts will arrive maybe 4 to 6 weeks after that, so we have roughly 2 months to prepare for the next phase. Daiho considered this. 2 months wasn't much time, but it would have to be enough. He had already decided what needed to be done. The question was whether the Earth Council would agree with his plan. On Mars base, Commander Youngman debriefed his pilots. The hangar was full of activity as fighters were serviced and rearmed. Maintenance crews swarmed over each craft, checking for damage and wear. Despite the intensity of the battle, every fighter had returned safely. Lieutenant Tae-hyung sat with his squadron in the briefing room, still riding the adrenaline high of combat. His hands shook slightly as he held a cup of water. Around him, other pilots talked excitedly, reliving the battle and comparing their performances. "Quiet down," Youngman said, and the room fell silent. "You all performed excellently today. Every target you engaged was destroyed. You followed orders, maintained formation discipline, and adapted to changing conditions. I'm proud of every one of you." The pilots beamed at the praise. For years they had wondered if they would ever see real combat. Now they had, and they had proven themselves. However, Youngman continued, his tone becoming serious, today was just the opening move. The Valthrine Dominion is a vast empire. What we destroyed was just one fleet. They have many more. And when they learn what happened here, they will respond with overwhelming force. The excitement in the room dimmed. Sora raised her hand. "Sir, how many ships do you think they'll send next time?" "Unknown," Youngman admitted. "But we have to assume thousands rather than hundreds. We hurt them today. We hurt them badly. They won't make the same mistake twice." Tae-hyung spoke up. "Will we be ready for that?" "We have to be," Youngman replied. "Admiral Daiho is already planning our next moves. But I can tell you this, we won't be sitting here waiting for them to come to us. Earth is done being reactive. From now on, we take the fight to them." In orbit, Captain Minji supervised the recovery operations. Specialized ships moved through the debris field, collecting samples of Valthrine technology. Every piece could provide valuable intelligence about the enemy's capabilities and weaknesses. Lieutenant Sang-hoon coordinated the recovery teams. "We're finding some interesting things, Captain. Their shield generators are more advanced than we expected. The energy distribution system is very efficient. Can we adapt it for our own use?" Minji asked. "Possibly. The engineers will need time to study it. But the basic principles look compatible with our technology." Minji nodded. One of humanity's strengths was the ability to learn and adapt. Every encounter with alien species had taught Earth something new. Sometimes it was technology, sometimes it was tactics or strategy. Each lesson made humanity stronger. "What about survivors?" Minji asked. "None detected, ma'am. It looks like the crew stayed with their ships to the end. Either they couldn't evacuate or they chose not to." Minji found that strange. Most species had strong survival instincts. To stay aboard a dying ship instead of launching an escape pod seemed almost suicidal, unless the Valthrine culture didn't permit surrender or retreat. That would explain their stubborn refusal to give up even when the battle was clearly lost. "Continue the search anyway," Minji ordered. "If there are any survivors in the wreckage, I want them found and brought in for questioning." Back on Earth, Admiral Daiho prepared for a meeting with the Earth Council. The council consisted of representatives from every nation on Earth, united under a single government since the first alien contact 70 years ago. The formation of the United Earth Government had been humanity's greatest achievement, ending centuries of division and conflict. Captain Hyunwoo accompanied Daiho to the council chambers. The building was located in Geneva, a massive structure designed to house representatives from every corner of the globe. Today's meeting would be crucial. Daiho planned to propose a course of action that would change Earth's role in the galaxy forever. The council chamber was circular, with seats arranged in tiers around a central speaking platform. As Daiho entered, the representative stood in respect. He walked to the center platform and activated the holographic display, which showed the recent battle in three-dimensional detail. "Members of the council," Daiho began. 2 hours ago, we faced and defeated an invasion fleet of 200 warships. The Valthrine Dominion sent their forces to conquer Earth, and we destroyed them completely. Not a single enemy vessel escaped. The council members applauded, but Daiho raised his hand for silence. This victory, while significant, creates new challenges. The Valthrine Dominion is a vast empire spanning 14 star systems. What we destroyed today was a single fleet, probably less than 10% of their total military strength. When they learn what happened here, they will return with overwhelming force. A counselor from Asia stood. Her name was Hana, and she served as the head of strategic planning. Admiral, what do you recommend? We have two choices, Daiho said. We can fortify our defenses and wait for them to come back, or we can take the initiative and strike first. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some counselors looked excited. Others appeared worried or afraid. Hana called for order. Explain your proposal, Admiral, Hana said. Daiho changed the holographic display to show a map of local space. The Valthrine Dominion's nearest base is located approximately 8 light-years from Earth. It's a military staging area where they assemble fleets and launch invasions. If we strike that base and destroy it, we accomplish two things. First, we eliminate a major threat. Second, we send a message to the entire Dominion that Earth is not to be trifled with. Another counselor stood. This was Minho, head of the Weapons Development Division. Admiral, are you suggesting we become the aggressors? That we launch an unprovoked attack on the Dominion? They already provoked us, Daiho replied firmly. They sent 200 ships to conquer our world. They fired first. Now we're simply responding in kind. But instead of waiting for them to gather more forces and try again, we hit them while they're still reeling from this defeat. Hana considered this. How long would it take to prepare for such a mission? 2 weeks, Daiho said. We have faster-than-light ships ready. We have experienced crews. We have weapons that we now know are superior to theirs. All we need is the Council's authorization to proceed. The debate lasted for hours. Some counselors argued for caution, suggesting Earth should focus on defense rather than offense. Others supported Daiho's plan, recognizing that passive defense would only invite more attacks. Eventually, Hana called for a vote. The result was close, but the authorization passed. Earth would go on the offensive. Admiral Daiho returned to his command center and immediately began planning the operation. Captain Jiwon helped him select ships and crews for the mission. They would take 30 vessels, 10 heavy destroyers, 15 frigates, and 5 support ships. It was a small force compared to what they had just defeated, but it would be enough. Who will command the mission? Jiwon asked. I will, Daiho said. This is too important to delegate, and I need you as my second in command. Jiwon nodded. What about Captain Hyunwoo? He'll stay here and command Earth's defenses while we're gone. If something goes wrong and the Dominion sends another fleet while we're away, someone needs. The journey through faster-than-light space always felt strange. Admiral Daiho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the view screen display abstract patterns of color and light as the ship tunneled through dimensions beyond human perception. The crew called it the blur, and most avoided looking at it for too long. It could make you dizzy or worse. 6 hours until we reach the target system, Captain Jiwon reported. All ships maintaining formation. No mechanical issues reported. Daiho nodded and moved to the tactical station where a 3-dimensional map showed their destination. The Valthrine military base was located in a system with 1 star and 4 planets. The base itself occupied the 3rd planet, a world similar to Mars, cold, dry, with a thin atmosphere. Perfect for a military installation that didn't need to support native life. What's our latest intelligence on the base defenses? Daiho asked. Lieutenant June pulled up the data. Long-range scans suggest 50 to 60 ships in orbit. Multiple defense platforms, ground-based weapons, probably plasma cannons and missile batteries. The base commander is likely unaware of what happened at Earth. As far as they know, their invasion fleet is still in transit or already conquering our world. Good, Daiho said. Surprise is our greatest weapon. We hit them hard and fast before they can organize a response. Around the bridge, officers prepared for combat. Weapon systems were checked and double-checked. Shield generators powered up to full capacity. Every crew member knew their role. They had drilled for this mission constantly during the 2-week journey from Earth. In the fighter bay, Lieutenant Tae-hyung ran through his pre-flight checks. His squadron had been selected for this mission, along with 5 others. 60 fighters total, ready to launch the moment they dropped out of faster-than-light speed. Sora was in the fighter next to his, also running checks. Nervous? She asked over their private comm channel. A little, Tae-hyung admitted. This is different from defending Earth. Now we're the invaders. Not invaders, Sora corrected. Liberators. Remember, the Valthrine Dominion has conquered 12 worlds. Who knows how many people are suffering under their rule? If we can weaken them, maybe those worlds can free themselves. Taehyung hadn't thought of it that way. He had been focused on the military aspect of the mission, striking the enemy before they could strike Earth again. But Sora was right. There was a larger moral dimension to this war. The Valthrine were oppressors. Fighting them wasn't just self-defense, it was justice. The hours passed slowly. The crew tried to stay relaxed, but tension built as they approached their destination. This would be their first offensive action against an alien power. Everything they had done before had been defensive, protecting Earth from threats. Now they were taking the fight to the enemy's home territory. Finally, the navigation officer announced, 1 minute to system entry. All hands, battle stations, Admiral Daeho ordered. Throughout the ship, alarms sounded. Crew members secured loose equipment and strapped into their positions. In the fighter bay, Taehyung sealed his helmet and felt his fighter's engines come to life beneath him. 30 seconds, the navigator called out. Daeho gripped the armrest of his command chair. All ships activate weapons on my mark. Fighters launch immediately upon entry. Engage any hostile targets. 10 seconds. The bridge fell silent except for the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light speed, and suddenly the view screen showed real stars again. The Valthrine military base appeared before them, a massive complex on the planet's surface with dozens of ships in orbit around it. For a moment, nobody moved. The Valthrine clearly weren't expecting visitors. Their ships were in standard patrol positions, not combat formations. Some looked like they were undergoing maintenance, with parts of their hulls open to space. Target acquisition, Jiwan said calmly. 54 enemy ships detected. Multiple defense platforms. Ground installations reading active. Fire, Daeho ordered. The Earth fleet unleashed everything they had. Quantum disintegration arrays, railguns, plasma cannons, missile volleys. All of it aimed at the surprised Valthrine forces. The first salvo caught 6 ships completely unprepared. They simply vanished, erased from existence before their crews even knew they were under attack. Launch fighters, Daeho commanded. Taehyung felt his fighter catapult from the launch tube. Within seconds, he was in open space, surrounded by 59 other Earth fighters. They formed up quickly and dove toward the enemy formation. All fighters, free engagement, the squadron leader called out. Pick your targets and go weapons free. Taehyung selected a Valthrine cruiser that was trying to activate its shields. He accelerated to attack speed and fired his plasma cannons. The shots punched through the cruiser's hull before the shields could fully form. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship as it began to break apart. Sora took down 2 frigates in quick succession. The Valthrine ships were slow to respond, their crews probably still trying to figure out what was happening. One moment they had been going about their routine duties. The next, they were under attack from an enemy they didn't even know existed. On the planet's surface, the base commander finally realized what was happening and activated the defense systems. Plasma cannons swiveled toward the Earth ships and opened fire. Missiles launched from underground silos. But Earth ships were ready. Their shields absorbed the plasma fire easily. Point defense systems shot down the missiles before they could reach their targets. And while the base defenses were focused on the capital ships, Earth's fighters slipped past and began attacking the ground installations. Taehyung led his squadron in a strafing run across the base's main power facility. Their weapons tore through the buildings, causing explosions that rippled across the complex. Secondary targets followed: command centers, communications arrays, defense platforms. Within 10 minutes of entering the system, the Earth fleet had destroyed half the enemy ships and crippled the base's defenses. The Valthrine were in complete disarray, their ships trying to organize some kind of response but failing to coordinate effectively. Admiral Daeho watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Captain Jiwan, status report. 27 enemy ships destroyed. 15 more heavily damaged. 8 attempting to flee the system. Our forces have sustained minimal damage, a few shield hits, nothing serious. Don't let any ships escape, Daeho ordered. Deploy pursuit teams. I want this base completely neutralized. Commander Youngman, who was commanding one of the destroyer squadrons, acknowledged the order. Pursuit teams deployed. We're tracking the fleeing vessels. The 8 Valthrine ships that were trying to escape didn't get far. Earth's vessels were faster, better armed and far more maneuverable. One by one, the fleeing ships were hunted down and destroyed. Some tried to fight, others tried to surrender. Deho accepted surrenders only from ships that powered down all weapons and dropped their shields. Any ship that kept fighting was destroyed without mercy. On the surface of the base planet, the command center was in chaos. The base commander, a Valthrine named Korval, stared at his displays in horror. In less than 15 minutes, his entire garrison had been decimated. Ships were burning in orbit. Defense platforms were offline. Ground installations were destroyed or burning. Who are they? Korval demanded. Where did they come from? His tactical officer checked the limited sensor data they still had. Unknown, sir. The ship designs don't match any species in our database. Their weapons technology is extremely advanced. They appeared without warning and attacked immediately. Send a distress signal to the nearest Dominion fleet, Korval ordered. Tell them we're under attack and need immediate reinforcement. The communications officer tried but shook his head. Sir, they're jamming all frequencies. I can't get a signal out. Korval realized with sinking dread that this was the same tactic his own fleet had used countless times. Attack without warning. Jam all communications. Destroy the target completely before anyone else could respond. Now it was being used against them. Incoming transmission, the communications officer said. The attackers are broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through, Korval ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and emotionless. It spoke in perfect Valthrine. This is Admiral Deho of Earth Defense Command. Your base is destroyed. Your ships are destroyed. You have one chance to survive. Surrender immediately. Power down all remaining weapons and evacuate to the surface. Any resistance will result in your complete annihilation. Korval looked around his command center. His officers stared back at him, waiting for orders. They could keep fighting, but it would be pointless. They had nothing left to fight with. Send the surrender signal, Korval said quietly. Tell all remaining personnel to evacuate. It's over. In orbit, Admiral Deho received the surrender notification. Captain Jiwan, confirm all enemy weapons are powered down. Confirmed, sir. Remaining ships are dropping shields and powering down weapon systems. Ground installations going dark. Good, Deho said. Send boarding teams to the ships that are still intact. I want prisoners for questioning. And deploy ground forces to secure the base facilities. Everything there is valuable intelligence. 3 weeks later, the Earth fleet returned home. As the ships dropped out of faster-than-light speed near Earth, they looked worn but victorious. Scorch marks covered their hulls where enemy weapons had struck. Some vessels trailed debris from damaged sections, but all 30 ships had survived, and they carried with them something more valuable than any treasure: complete intelligence on the Valthrine Dominion's military structure. Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching Earth grow larger on the viewscreen. He had led his fleet on a campaign through enemy territory, attacking 4 different Valthrine bases in rapid succession. Each base had been captured or destroyed before the Dominion could respond. They had taken thousands of prisoners, captured dozens of ships, and gathered intelligence that would change the course of the war. But now came the difficult part: explaining to the Earth Council why he had exceeded his original mission parameters. Sir, we're being hailed by Earth Defense Command, Captain Jiwan reported. Captain Hyunwoo wants to speak with you. Put him through, Deho said. Hyunwoo's face appeared on the screen, smiling broadly. Welcome home, Admiral. We've been tracking your progress through the data bursts you sent. 4 bases captured or destroyed, minimal casualties on our side, and enough intelligence to keep our analysts busy for months. It's an impressive achievement. Thank you, Captain, Deho replied. But I suspect the Council might have a different view. They want to see you immediately, Hyunwoo confirmed. There's been quite a bit of debate about your extended campaign. Some counselors are calling you a hero. Others think you exceeded your authority. I did exceed my authority, Deho said bluntly. I made a tactical decision in the field. Now I'll face the consequences. The fleet docked at the orbital station surrounding Earth. As the crews disembarked, they were greeted as heroes. News of their victories had spread across the planet. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had struck back at the alien empire that threatened them. For the first time in human history, Earth was on the offensive in an interstellar war. Lieutenant Taehyung and his squadron received particularly enthusiastic welcomes. They had flown dozens of combat missions across 4 different star systems, destroying over 100 enemy vessels between them. The young pilot, who had wondered if he would ever see real combat, was now a veteran warrior with more experience than most soldiers gained in a lifetime. Sora walked beside him through the station corridors, both of them still in their flight suits. People stopped to applaud as they passed. Children asked for autographs. It was overwhelming. "This feels strange," Taehyung said. "We're being treated like celebrities." "We are celebrities," Sora replied. "We helped defeat an alien invasion and then took the fight to them. People need heroes right now. They need to believe Earth can win this war." In the medical bay, doctors treated the prisoners captured during the raids. There were over 3,000 Valthrine soldiers and crew members, all held in secure facilities. Most were cooperative, seeing no point in further resistance. A few were defiant, refusing to speak to their captors. Lieutenant June supervised the interrogations, working with translators and cultural experts to extract useful information. What they learned painted a disturbing picture of the Valthrine Dominion. It was a rigid, militaristic society that valued conquest above all else. Surrender was considered shameful. Mercy was seen as weakness. The Dominion had conquered 12 worlds not for resources or territory, but simply to prove their superiority. "They're bullies on a galactic scale," June reported to his superiors. "They attack species they think are weaker than them. But they've never faced serious resistance before. None of the worlds they conquered had advanced military technology. Earth is the first opponent that's fought back effectively." Admiral Daeho prepared for his meeting with the Council by reviewing all the data from the campaign. 4 bases destroyed, 87 enemy ships captured or eliminated, over 15,000 enemy soldiers killed or captured, and, most importantly, complete intelligence on Valthrine military operations throughout their territory. When he entered the Council chambers, he was met with mixed reactions. Some counselors stood and applauded. Others remained seated, their faces stern. Counselor Hana, head of strategic planning, called the session to order. "Admiral Daeho," Hana began, "you were authorized to conduct a single strike against 1 Valthrine base. Instead, you conducted a 3-week campaign against 4 bases deep in enemy territory without consulting this council. Please explain your reasoning." Daeho stood at the central platform, his uniform crisp and his bearing proud. "I saw an opportunity to inflict maximum damage on the enemy while they were confused and disorganized. Each base we captured provided intelligence on the next target. By moving quickly, we were able to strike before the Dominion could respond. If I had stopped after the first base and returned to Earth for further authorization, that opportunity would have been lost." Counselor Minho, head of weapons development, spoke next. "Admiral, you took enormous risks. What if the Dominion had reinforced one of those bases? What if your fleet had been surrounded and destroyed? You could have lost 30 ships and their entire crews." "That's true," Daeho acknowledged. "War involves risk, but I calculated that the potential gains outweighed those risks, and I was right. We now have complete maps of Valthrine territory, their defensive positions, their fleet movements, everything. This intelligence is invaluable." Another counselor stood. "But at what cost? You've provoked them. When they learn what you've done, they'll respond with even greater force." "They were already going to respond with greater force," Daeho countered. "The moment we destroyed their first invasion fleet, we guaranteed retaliation. The question was never whether they would come back, but how prepared we would be when they did. Now we understand their capabilities, their tactics, and their weaknesses. We're far better prepared than we were 3 weeks ago." The debate continued for hours. Some counselors argued that Daeho should be disciplined for exceeding his authority. Others insisted he should be promoted and given even greater freedom to conduct military operations. The chamber was divided almost evenly. Finally, Hana called for order. "Admiral Daeho, please step outside while the council votes on this matter." Daeho saluted and left the chamber. He stood in the corridor outside, waiting. Captain Jiwon found him there. "How did it go?" she asked. "I honestly don't know," Daeho replied. "It could go either way." They waited for 2 hours before being called back inside. The council chamber was quiet as Hana announced their decision. "Admiral Daeho, this council has voted on your conduct during the recent campaign. By a vote of 53 to 47, we find that your actions, while unauthorized, were in the best interests of Earth's defense. You are hereby officially commended for your tactical initiative and strategic thinking. Deho felt relief wash over him. Thank you, Counselor. However, Hana continued, this council also recognizes that we need clearer guidelines for military operations. Therefore, we are establishing a new position, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces. This commander will have authority to make tactical decisions in the field, without requiring council approval for every action. Admiral Deho, you are appointed to this position effective immediately. The chamber erupted in applause. Even the councillors who had argued against him stood and clapped. Deho bowed respectfully, accepting the honor and the responsibility it carried. Over the following weeks, Earth transformed from a defensive posture to an offensive one. Using the captured intelligence, military planners identified key targets throughout Valthrine space. Fleet yards where new ships were being built, supply depots that supported their occupation forces, command centers that coordinated their military operations. Engineer Yunji worked with her team to reverse engineer captured Valthrine technology. Their ships used different power systems than Earth vessels, but the basic principles were similar. By combining Valthrine and human technology, Earth's engineers created hybrid systems that were superior to either one alone. We've improved our shield efficiency by 40%, Yunji reported at a strategy meeting, and our weapons range has increased by 25%. The next generation of Earth ships will be significantly more powerful than what we have now. Commander Youngman was already training new fighter squadrons. The success of pilots like Taehyung and Sora had inspired thousands of young people to volunteer for the Space Defense Corps. For every pilot position available, there were 50 applicants. The same was true for every branch of military service. Earth is mobilizing, Youngman told Admiral Deho. Everyone wants to be part of this. They see what we accomplished and they want to help finish the job. But not everyone on Earth was enthusiastic about the war. Some people argued that Earth should seek peace with the Valthrine, that more fighting would only lead to more death. Peace activists organized protests, calling for diplomatic negotiations instead of military action. Counselor Hana addressed these concerns in a public speech. We would welcome peace, she said, but peace requires both sides to want it. The Valthrine Dominion sent 200 ships to conquer us. They came without warning, without negotiation, without mercy. They intended to enslave or destroy our entire species. We defended ourselves, and now, 6 months after the first Valthrine ship was destroyed at Earth, Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching a world burn. Not with fire, but with freedom. The planet below was called Cathara by its native inhabitants. The Valthrine had conquered it 20 years ago, forcing the population into labor camps and stripping the world of its resources. For 2 decades, the Catharan people had suffered under brutal occupation, but today that was ending. Earth's fleet had arrived 3 days ago, destroying the Valthrine garrison in orbit within hours. Then they had deployed ground forces to support the local resistance fighters. Now across the planet's surface, Valthrine occupation forces were surrendering or fleeing. The Catharans were free. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the planet, Captain Jiwan reported. The Catharan Provisional Government wants to thank you personally. Deho nodded. Put them through. A face appeared on the view screen. Humanoid, but with features unlike any Earth species. The Catharan leader's eyes held tears of joy and relief. Admiral Deho, the leader said, their voice trembling with emotion. For 20 years we suffered. We prayed for rescue. We fought when we could, but we were outmatched. And then you came, you who owe us nothing. You, who we had never heard of before. You came and freed us. We came because it was right, Deho replied simply. The Valthrine tried to enslave my world too. We were fortunate enough to defeat them. Now we're helping others do the same. Over the past 6 months, this scene had repeated itself across 5 different worlds. Each one had been conquered by the Dominion. Each one had been liberated by Earth forces. And with each liberation, Earth gained new allies, new intelligence, and new momentum in the war. The Valthrine Dominion was collapsing. Their military infrastructure was in ruins. Their occupied worlds were rebelling. Their fleet was scattered and demoralized. What had once been a mighty empire spanning 14 star systems was now fragmenting into isolated strongholds, each one waiting nervously for Earth's fleet to arrive. Lieutenant Taehyung led his fighter squadron on patrol above Cathara, watching for any remaining Valthrine ships. His squadron had grown from 12 fighters to 36, and he now commanded 3 full wings. He was 27 years old and already one of the most experienced combat pilots in human history. Commander Taehyung, his wingman, called out a new pilot named Jisoo. "I'm detecting a small ship trying to leave the planet. Looks like a Valthrine shuttle." "Let it go," Taehyung ordered. "If they're fleeing, we don't need to shoot them. We're liberators, not executioners." "Understood, sir." Taehyung remembered the young pilot he had been 6 months ago, nervous about his first real combat. Now he gave orders with confidence, knowing his decisions could mean life or death. The war had changed him, made him harder in some ways but also wiser. Sora commanded her own squadron now, operating from a different destroyer in the fleet. They stayed in contact when they could, comparing experiences and supporting each other through the difficult times. Combat took a toll even when you were winning. Every battle meant watching people die, even if they were enemies. On the surface of Cathara, Commander Youngman coordinated with local resistance leaders. Earth's ground forces had worked alongside the Catharans to clear out the last Valthrine positions. Now they were helping establish security and restore order. One resistance leader, who called himself Tomal, approached Youngman with a question. "What happens now? Will Earth rule us like the Valthrine did?" "No," Youngman said firmly. "Earth doesn't want an empire. We're not here to conquer. We're here to free people from the Dominion's tyranny. What you do with your freedom is up to you. We'll help you rebuild if you want. We'll trade with you, share technology, offer protection. But we won't rule you." Tomal looked surprised. "That's unusual. Most powerful species want to dominate weaker ones." "Earth learned a long time ago that domination doesn't work," Youngman explained. "We had enough wars among ourselves before we unified. We know that lasting peace comes from cooperation, not conquest." This philosophy had become Earth's guiding principle in the war. Every world they liberated was offered friendship, not subjugation. Some chose to join Earth's growing alliance. Others preferred independence but remained on good terms. Either way, Earth gained allies while the Dominion lost subjects. Back on Earth, the war effort continued to expand. New ships launched every week from orbital shipyards. The fleet that had started with 30 vessels now numbered over 200. Earth's industrial capacity, dormant for so long, had awakened with fierce energy. Counselor Hana addressed the Earth Council with the latest status report. "Our forces have liberated 5 worlds, destroyed 18 Valthrine bases, and eliminated over 60% of their military fleet. The Dominion's territory has been reduced to 9 star systems, and 4 of those are experiencing internal rebellions." "What about casualties on our side?" another counselor asked. "We've lost 43 ships and approximately 12,000 personnel," Hana reported. The room fell silent at those numbers. "Each loss is tragic, but compared to the scale of the campaign, our casualty rate is remarkably low. Earth's military doctrine of superior technology and tactics has proven effective." "What's our end goal?" Counselor Minho asked. "Do we completely destroy the Dominion? Force their surrender? What does victory look like?" Hana looked to Admiral Deho, who was attending the meeting via video link from his flagship. "Admiral?" Deho appeared on the large screen at the front of the chamber. "Victory means ensuring the Dominion can never threaten Earth again. That doesn't necessarily require their complete destruction. If they surrender, agree to free all occupied worlds, and limit their military to defensive forces only, we could accept that. But they have to truly surrender, not just pause to rebuild for another attack. And if they won't surrender," Minho pressed, "then we keep fighting until they have no choice," Deho said bluntly. "We didn't start this war, but we will finish it." Deep in what remained of Valthrine space, the Dominion's leadership finally acknowledged reality. The High Commander called an emergency council meeting in the capital city on their homeworld. The council chamber, usually filled with proud military officers boasting of conquests, now held only defeated, frightened leaders. "We have lost everything," the High Commander said, his voice heavy with despair. 6 systems gone, 5 occupied worlds liberated, our fleet reduced to scattered remnants, and all of this in just 6 months. How did it happen so quickly? An intelligence officer stepped forward. "Sir, we finally have confirmation about who attacked us. They call themselves humans. They come from a world called Earth, 26 light years from our nearest base." "Earth," the High Commander repeated. "The world our scout ships reported as primitive?" "Yes, sir. But the scouts were wrong. Earth is highly advanced. Their technology equals or exceeds ours in every category. Their tactics are superior. Their forces are well-trained and motivated. We underestimated them catastrophically. The High Commander slumped in his chair. For 800 years, the Dominion had existed to conquer. Conquest was their purpose, their identity. But now they were the ones being conquered. The pride that had defined their entire civilization had become their downfall. "Can we negotiate?" the High Commander asked quietly. The council members looked shocked. Negotiate? The Dominion didn't negotiate. They conquered or died trying. But looking at the strategic maps, seeing their territory shrinking day by day, they realized that traditional thinking no longer applied. "We could try," an advisor suggested carefully, "but we don't know if Earth would accept any terms we offer." "We have to try," the High Commander insisted. "Prepare a communication. Tell Earth we want to discuss peace." The message was sent through secure channels, transmitted to one of Earth's liberated worlds where they knew human forces were operating. It reached Admiral Deho 2 days later. He read it carefully, then called a meeting with his senior officers. Captain Ji-won, Captain Hyunwoo, Commander Youngmin, and others gathered around the conference table in the Indomitable's briefing room. "The Dominion wants to talk," Deho announced. "They're offering negotiations." "It could be a trap," Hyunwoo suggested. "Possibly," Deho agreed. "But I don't think so. We've broken them militarily. They have nothing left to fight with. Negotiations make sense from their perspective." "What do we ask for?" Youngmin wondered. "Everything," Ji-won said firmly. "Complete demilitarization, freedom for all occupied worlds, reparations for the damage they've caused, and oversight to ensure they never rebuild their military capacity." Deho nodded. "Agreed, but we need council approval for any peace terms. This decision is too important to make alone." He transmitted the Dominion's message back to Earth and waited for the Council's response. It came 2 days later. "Proceed with negotiations, but be prepared for treachery." Earth's fleet would remain on full alert, ready to resume combat if the talks were a ruse. The negotiations took place on a neutral world, one recently liberated from Valthrine control. Admiral Deho led the Earth delegation, accompanied by Ji-won, Youngmin, and several diplomatic specialists.